Hello, hello. We are starting soon. There we go. The timer just reached zero. So we are starting. Welcome, everyone. I'll, good, whatever part of the day it is. We're all spread around the world, right? So good morning, afternoon, evening, good night. I'll fill these first 20 seconds while everyone finds their seat. In fact, let me turn this timer off. We don't need it anymore. And we have started. So welcome, everyone. Most of the things I'll be showing you this slide. So all the information about what I'll be talking about is at realpython.com/live. So I'll refer to it from time to time. First of all, just to make sure you're in the right place, I'll be talking today about a course for beginners. This is an instructor-led course, which will be several weeks long, 8 weeks long. It's for beginners. So if you're a complete beginner, you've never done any programming before, then you're in the right place. If you have done a bit of programming before. Perhaps you've started learning it in the past. You've covered some of the basics from textbooks or tutorials, but now you're ready to go through the basics again. Make sure there are no gaps. Get confidence. That's why it's called Code with Confidence. Get confident and then be ready to move on after this course. Then that's a different type of beginner. You still call yourself a beginner. You're also in the right place. So welcome. If, however, you're a proficient Python programmer, you've been coding in Python for many years, you're more than welcome to stay and listen to me talk for the next half an hour. But this is not going to be the course for you. We do have courses for intermediate levels and other levels, but that's not what I'm talking about today. Good. Hopefully, if you're still here, great. It means that this is for you. Let me quickly introduce myself, not because you came here to find out about me, you came here to find out about the Python for Beginners course, but this is an instructor-led course, and I'll be the instructor for this course. So maybe you want to know half a minute of who I am. So my name is Stephen, as it probably says under my face, wherever you can see me. By profession, I'm a scientist, and I worked as a physicist for many years before swapping physics for Python. And in the last 10 years, I've been focused on teaching Python. I taught Python to all ages, from 7-year-old kids to whatever age, all the way to, I don't know what the oldest person I've taught is, anyway. Beginners to intermediate to advanced. I've written about Python, I've taught live courses, I've done videos, anything to do with teaching Python, I've done it. So that's what I do now. And about a year ago, I joined RealPython to set up and run these live courses. So if you're familiar with RealPython, and if you're not, by the way, if it's the first time you heard about RealPython, and welcome to RealPython. But if you've heard about RealPython, then you'll be familiar with the tutorials, the written tutorials. They range from beginners all the way to advanced. Although if you're here, you're a beginner, so you probably haven't seen the advanced ones. Written articles or video courses. They've been around at RealPython for a while, so these form the core of what RealPython offers, or offered until last year. This year, we also have live courses. We've already run quite a few of these cohort-based courses earlier this year. They were not beginners courses, so don't worry, you haven't missed anything. They were intermediate courses, but the format I'm going to talk about today is very similar to the courses we've already run quite a few of earlier this year. So we know it works. We've even fine-tuned a bit based on the feedback we got from other students. So the format I'll talk about is tried and tested. And I'll tell you more about it so that you can see whether it's what you're looking for. Okay, so let me introduce this course. The idea behind this course is that it's not one of those boot camps where you have to give up everything, dedicate entire days for weeks and weeks and weeks. They may have their place somewhere. That's not what we wanted to offer. We wanted to offer something that is flexible enough so that you, hopefully, can fit it within your busy lives. You have work, you have studies, you have family, friends, the dog to take for a walk, whatever it might be. Not everyone can put a pause on their life to study Python for 8 weeks. So we've designed a course that is flexible enough so that you can hopefully fit it within your already busy schedules. And I'll tell you more about what's going to happen every day of the course. It's also an instructor-led course. That's important, I think. You have someone guiding you through the whole course. There's going to be me in this course. Hello. And it's also a group course. We'll have small groups, as I'll show you in a bit. But I think those two things are important because sometimes you want somehow something or someone to keep you accountable. I'm not saying that you wouldn't be accountable otherwise, but we've all been there. You start to learn something, perhaps it's a bit on the side, but perhaps it's something you don't need right now. And then you think, oh, I'll do this tomorrow, and I'll do it tomorrow, and I'll do it tomorrow. And it never happens. Whereas if you have a course like the one I'm going to describe with me, the instructor, I was going to say breathing down your neck in a good way, right? Sort of making sure that this is today's material and other students who are learning with you. I think it helps with motivation and accountability. So those are the two key principles, I think, of this course, the flexibility, but also the instructor who's guiding you and helping you and hopefully keeping you accountable. Okay, before I get started, well, I have already got started, but before I go to the main two things I want to talk about, this is an information session, but it's also about you asking questions. Feel free to ask the questions at any point you want. You don't have to wait till the end. There are different audiences here. Some of you are on Zoom. If you're on Zoom, you know who you are. You can type the question in the chat, or if you prefer, you can raise your hand and ask using your own voice if you want a break from my voice. If you are, we're also streaming this on several social media platforms. You should be able to write your comment there. And if you see me look to my left, I'm looking at the two chats. So I'll keep an eye on the questions that are coming in. So feel free to send your questions at any point. I may not answer them as soon as they hit my screen on the left, but I'll keep an eye on the questions. So please do ask questions. Okay, two areas I want to talk about today, and I'm going to keep this brief, right? I don't want to keep you all too long, so I'll go quickly, and then if you have questions, I'll expand as needed. I want to talk about the format of the course. Now, this is important because you need to know whether this is the format that works for you, that fits within your busy schedule and lifestyle. So I'll talk a bit about the format, how the course is structured, etc., etc. I'll start with that. And then I'll talk about the content of the course. Now, it's a beginner's course, so the content is easy to talk about, right? We're going to start from the beginning. And by the way, I'm recording this session, so anyone who wants the recording afterwards, if you have to pop out at some point or whatever, if you're on Zoom, you'll get an email with the recording. If you're anywhere else, you can find me on social media or email Real Python, or it will be on the Real Python's YouTube page. So the content will be easy to talk about because it's a beginner's course, but I'll still show you a few things of what we'll be going through week after week after week. Okay, something got into my eye, but that's okay. We'll go on. Let's start. Hi, I can see some comments coming in. Brilliant. No questions yet, so hello to everyone. I'll keep an eye on the questions. Let me start by talking about the format then. Let me shift screen to this one. Now, one thing you need to know about me, I don't like PowerPoint slides. So if you join the course, by the way, this course starts this coming Monday, and we only have a very few number of places left, right? Because it's almost about to start. So if you do join the course, one thing I can promise you is that you won't have any PowerPoint slides. I don't like teaching with them. So even here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a running commentary as I go along. So sort of, I'm going to write my thoughts as it were. Let me go through a few quick points of the key sort of the highlights of what the format of the course is like. I'll go through them quickly to give you a snapshot, and then I'll go through them again with a tiny bit more detail without keeping you too long. So first thing you need to know, it's an 8-week course. Well, you need to know how long it is, right? I'll tell you why 8 weeks we feel is just right, the Goldilocks length. I'll explain a bit more in a bit. Now, another important bit, roughly, there's about 1 or 2 hours commitment every day. Did I spell commitment right there? Never mind, whatever. So I say roughly, right? And I'll tell you what these 1 or 2 hours, what they'll be made up of in a bit. Sometimes it might be a bit more than 2 hours, but what I tried to do, I designed the course as well as running it. I'm the one who designed the course, so I'll be able to answer all your questions, hopefully. What I've tried to do is that if there's a day where there's a bit more material, which might take a bit longer than 2 hours. Then I try to follow it with a slightly calmer day. So it's roughly 1 or 2 hours commitment each day. So if you already know that there's no way you can fit 2 hours in your busy schedule, then again, this is probably not the course for you, right? We're going to cover 8 weeks, 2 hours a day, but they're quite dense. So we do need, we do, if you should have a couple of hours you can spare for the course over the duration of 8 weeks. Now, I'll explain in a bit how most of this work, this is where the flexibility comes in, you should be able to do at any part of the day that suits you. But we'll also have 3 live sessions each week. And I'll tell you more about what they are. So yes, it's flexible. You'll be able to do a lot of the work yourself, but this is an instructor-led course. Meeting every week is a really important part of the course. So those are the fixed points where it's less flexible because we will have fixed times where we're going to meet. 10 students per cohort. Again, I'll tell you more why 10 we feel is a magic number. And finally, there's a forum. Okay, that's a snapshot. Let me go through each one of these and I'll add a tiny bit more. I'll have a look at questions. Good. Masfin, I'll answer your question. That's a really great question. I'll come back to it in a bit. For those who can't see it, the question is, there are many video tutorials out there. How is this different from them? And I'll start by saying that this is an instructor-led course. So I am there live 3 times a week, and the rest of the week on the forum I'll be guiding you day by day, and I'll be there present. You can talk to me, you can ask me questions. So that's the main difference. Apart from the fact that we're using real Python material, which is, those of you who know it, is fairly high quality compared to something else you might find. So that's to answer your question in brief, Masfin. But I'll hopefully over the next few minutes, I'll give you more information and then I'll come back and see whether I've answered your question. Good, good. By the way, some people are asking on details. Let me also, I had this link earlier, but let me post it in the chats, realpython.com/live. So I'll be talking about dates and times, but if you want to see dates, how to enroll, price, etc., etc., realpython.com/live, I'll always send you there so I can focus on the format and the content of the course. So why 8 weeks? We want to cover the basics of Python. We're going to start from the basics, but we want to cover them well. We don't want to just speed through topics, ticking them off the list and saying, good, we've covered this, we've covered that. So we want a bit of time to explore these topics, sort of dig a bit underneath the surface, work on projects and examples, because the theory is great, but we need to work on projects and examples. And when I show you the content later on, you'll see that there are lots of mini projects everywhere. And the larger project at the end. So we wanted to have enough time for these concepts to settle in, you can understand them well, and you can see how they're all linked together, rather than just whizzing through, covering lots of topics briefly and moving on. That's why 8 weeks. We didn't then want it to be much longer because it's quite intensive. It's only 1 or 2 hours a day, but you're doing this along with other things you're doing. The 2 hours you do a day are quite intensive. So once you start getting 10, 12, 15 weeks, the concentrations will lapse. So we found 8 weeks is great to be able to get good amount of content, cover it well, without then extending the course too long. Now, what will a typical day look like? Or what will an average day look like? Because there's no such thing as a typical day. So every day, I've curated content from our real Python resources. Some of them will be written content, some of them will be video lessons, and I've curated them in chunks that fit in each day. So this is the part where you have the flexibility of going through this material at 5 in the morning before you go for a run, or at lunchtime, or at the end of your day, or whenever you want. There'll be exercises to work on, mini projects to work on, etc., etc. However, we will then meet 3 times a week. And this is an important part because when you're going through that material, you're going to have questions. Some things you might say, I can't understand this. That's what I'm for. Or you might understand something and think, have I understood this correctly? Again, that's where I come in various formats. One of them is the 3 live sessions a week. So these will be, there's going to be a 90-minute, let's call it a structured session. And this is going to be every Wednesday in this course. So every Wednesday, and what I mean by a structured session is that part of the content in the week, rather than covering it through the flexible sort of material you read and watch, we'll do it live in a session. So this is all live, right? 30-minute live structured session. So some of the material every week, I'll cover it in the live session. Now, the live sessions are not like this one, definitely not. Here, there's a large number of you, so I am passing on information and keeping an eye on the chat and answering questions. These sessions will be much smaller groups. I'll come to this in a second. We'll all be seeing each other. Here, you can see me, but I can't see you. That doesn't work really well. So we'll all be seeing each other, discussing and chatting with each other. So this is not me talking to you in these live sessions. It's us having a discussion. And because they're small groups, you'll be able to all participate, ask questions, have the, carry on the conversations, etc., etc. So that's one of the 3 live sessions a week. The other 2 are Q&A sessions. These will be 60 minutes, although if there are more questions, we'll go longer, right? And the difference here is, so all of the sessions I run are informal, right? So even the 90-minute structured session is informal. However, I come with a set of things I want to cover in the 90 minutes. In the Q&As, as it says on the tin, you bring your own questions. Well, I'm going to say I'll answer them. Of course, I'll answer them. But sometimes I like to call this a Q&A and D. The D is for discussion. Because rather than you asking questions and me answering them, often we learn more. We really get it when we have a discussion. We sort of meander a bit off path and then come back. And that journey of discussing things around the topic, that's when you get that aha moment. So the Q&A sessions are, you bring questions, we have a discussion about them to make sure that by the end you're like, yeah, I got it. So when I was talking about the daily work you will do in your own time, I said, look, you will have questions. And there are 2 things you could do with those questions. You can do both of them as well. One of them is write it down and then bring it to the next Q&A. And then you ask it and we have a discussion live. The other one I'll come back to in a bit. So 2 things to do with questions. Okay, so the Q&As will be Mondays and Fridays in this particular course. So we'll be meeting Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Monday and Friday for the Q&As and Wednesday for the slightly longer structured session. Every cohort is 10 students, and we're going to be running just 2 cohorts at the same time. So you'll see, and I'll show you in a bit, that there are 2 different time slots. For the live sessions, live sessions are the only things that are fixed in the week. Everything else you do in your own time. The live sessions obviously are live, so we have 2 different times. You choose either one or the other. Every cohort will be around 10 students, and we want these to be small because we want to have discussions, as I've mentioned before. The moment it starts to get 20, 30, 40 people, you can't really have a discussion. Then it becomes the instructor talking to the students, like I'm doing now. But in the course, will only be 10 of us, well, 11 plus me, and therefore we'll be able to chat, discuss. It means you're more likely to say, oh, hey, Stephen, can I ask a question? Of course you can. This small group allows us to do that. We'll have 2 groups running at the same time. So in all, there will be 20 students, but split into sort of 2 separate cohorts. Last but not least, as the cliche goes, well, it's a cliche, but it's true. The forum, I think, is a really important part of this course. It's the glue that brings everything together, if you like. Because the forum, which is exclusive for this course, right? So it's a forum just for the 2 cohorts and myself and maybe 1 or 2 of my colleagues here at Real Python. So it's a small group. And the idea is that the forum is, well, it's a forum, right? As the old-fashioned forums were. And the difference is that this forum runs 24/7. Now, I do sleep from time to time, so I won't be there 24/7, but throughout my waking hours, I'll be on the forum constantly checking things and making sure I can keep the conversations going. But going back to what do you do with the questions as you're going through the material? Bring them to the Q&As and slash or you can do both and post them on the forum the moment you have them. And either right away or when I wake up in the morning, I'll come back and discuss them. Or even if I'm asleep, one of the other students might come in and start a discussion. Then I'll obviously join in and make sure that the discussion veers into the right direction. So the forum is the place where we will keep the discussion going, let me say 24/7, right? You know what I mean, throughout the whole 8 weeks. You'll be working on exercises as part of your work. You finished an exercise, you've written some code, post it on the forum. You get feedback. You might also see other students' code and you think, oh, this is different to mine. And that's great because that's what we can discuss. Here are the pros and cons of this version. Here are the pros and cons of the other version. So the forum is a place where we can give feedback, discuss, keep the discussion going, etc., etc. Okay, so in terms of format, I think I've covered everything I wanted to cover. So it's an 8-week course. Every day, and by day I mean Monday to Friday, right? So it's 5-day weeks. You get the weekend off, although the forum is still there. I'll still be there answering your questions if you want to post something on a Saturday and Sunday, and maybe you might want to catch up. But the 5 days a week, the days where there's content are Monday to Friday. A lot of the material you can do whenever you need during the day, but we will have sessions where we meet, and this is really important. This is, after all, an instructor-led course. That's me. 10 students per cohort, and the forum that keeps going, keeps the discussion going, etc., etc. Let me have a look at a few questions before I talk about the content of the course. Yeah, so realpython.com/live for all the admin. I'll show you the page in a bit, right? All the times, dates, prices, how to enroll, etc. I'm a beginner in Python, Mohammed. Brilliant. This is a course for beginners. I'll show you the content in a bit. If you're a beginner, it might not make any sense, but the important point is you don't need any prior knowledge to join this course. So if you've never done programming before, that's good. Great question. Will recorded video be available after each class? So yes, the live sessions, you get more out of them if you join live, because the whole point of the live sessions is that we're having a discussion. But if you need to miss a session, or if you need to leave halfway through, all these sessions, all the live sessions are recorded. So as soon as the session finishes, you'll have access to the recording, or maybe you just want to watch it again and, you know, sort of say, oh, I want to listen to the discussion we had at sort of 20 minutes past the hour, and therefore the recording is there. So yes, the live sessions are recorded. And one thing I should add at this stage is that you will have access to all of the material. Every day of the course there's material, and all of the recordings and all of the forum content for as long as you want to, right? So it's not just for the 8 weeks of the course, you'll keep everything for after the course as well. So all the conversations we have, all the recorded sessions, all the content, you keep it forever, of course. That was a question, a few questions on Zoom. So this is a separate product, right? So those of you who are familiar with Real Python membership, this is an instructor-led, so I'll be dedicated to the 20 students for the whole 8 weeks with lots of live sessions. So this is a standalone service or product. We will be using some of the Real Python material, but it's separate from the membership. Is there a recommended IDE for the course? Now, some of you are beginners, so you might be thinking, what is an IDE? An IDE is an editor to write. Well, Python is the language, and we need something to write and run Python. It's a bit like if you're writing in English and you're on a computer, you might need Google Docs or Microsoft Word or some other software. Here, we're using Python, we need something to write in Python, and there are many different softwares. So to answer your question, Jeff, no, as in if you have, we are going to be using an editor, right? So command line is great for small things, but at the end of the day, you need to write script somewhere. So my advice is if you're already familiar with something, that's perfectly fine. I'm very agnostic on what the right tools are. But if someone has no idea where to start, then we will give some recommendations on if you don't know how to code in, as in the tools you need, have a look at these and here's help with installing them. But you can use whatever you want. So if you already know that you're going to be familiar with some type of IDE, some type of editor, you're more than welcome to keep using that. But yes, we're very agnostic. So we will suggest tools if you need suggestion, but you can use whatever you want. How is this different from currently subscribed members who have access to videos, text version, and forum? This is a structured course. So I've curated an 8-week course for you. I'll be there every day answering your questions. We'll be meeting live every week. We'll be working on projects together. So this is very much me working with you for 8 weeks, guiding you to the content. So yes, we are using the exceptionally great, if I can say so myself, real Python material. But this is very much me leading you through 8 weeks, answering your questions, discussing it, etc., etc. James, can we use idle? Again, if you're a beginner, you don't know what idle is. If you're comfortable with idle, James, by all means. I'm not a big fan of idle. I think it's very restrictive. So if you're asking me for would I recommend it? Well, no, I'd probably recommend something else. But if you're comfortable with that, we're going to focus on the Python code, not on the tools you need to write Python. So if you're happy with idle, by all means, use it. So in terms of the editor you want to use, if you already have a favorite or something you're used to, stick with it. If not, we'll recommend one or two. And one more question before I move on to the content. Will this just be learning the code or be working on packages and reading, manipulating external files? That is my prior learning has fallen apart. Okay, so I'll answer your question, Maureen, in a second, or hopefully, and then if not, come back. If I don't answer your question, let me know. I'll talk about content. I'll show you the content, and I'll talk a bit about the projects we'll be working on, and etc. etc. Okay, let me now move on to the next bit then. I've talked about format and ask me questions as much as you want. Let me now talk about content. And I'm going to go to realpython.com/live. I'm not going to read through this. Of course, you can go and read through it, but I'll show you the week by week outline of the course. By the way, there are dates as well there. So this starts this coming Monday. As I mentioned, there aren't many places left. So I think booking closes on Friday because we will actually start things going over the weekend, of course. And then it goes on to December the 5th, so 8 weeks. Incidentally, there you can see the sessions we're going to have. And when you go to realpython.com/live, the times shown here will be in your time zone because I'm based in the UK, so it's showing me the times for me. But to find out whether the times work for you, if you go to realpython.com/live, you'll see the times in your own time zone. You'll find that there are two groups. You just need one of them. So if one of these times works for you, that's great. You don't need both because they're going to be the same, right? So one cohort early in the morning for me and one late in the evening for me. But for you, it might be different times. So this, as I've mentioned, is a course for beginners, which means that there's no prior knowledge. Assume you don't need to have any prior knowledge. Now, some of you will have covered some of the basics. I've mentioned this in the beginning, but in case someone joined later, let me say this again. There are two types of beginners, right? Those who have never done any coding before. We will start from the basics. And then there are those beginners who still consider themselves beginners because they've done a bit. You know, maybe you see, oh yeah, I know what an if statement is. Yeah, I've seen a while loop before. But you feel like you don't quite know the basics well enough how they fit together. So you want to go through start from the beginning again, make sure there are no gaps, and make sure you know how all the pieces of the jigsaw come together. So if that's you, then this is also great for you. You'll find that even with some of these topics where you think, oh yeah, I do know how to write a while loop. I quite like when I'm teaching to dig a bit underneath the surface to see how things are connected sort of a layer underneath the surface, how things work, and not just how to write code, but why do we write it this way. So even if you are familiar with some of these, I'm sure you'll understand them at a deeper level. But we're going to start from the basics. So if you are new to programming, none of this will make sense, and that's fine. You start learning them next week. But these are the fundamental building blocks. Anything you ever want to do with programming will need these building blocks. So we're going to start from these. Um, I did mention we have, so the theory is great, it's important, but we also want to put it into practice. So throughout the course, you'll see mini projects everywhere. And of course, these will start off limited in scope because they're mini projects. We're fitting them around all the other studying we're doing. And especially on week one, there isn't, we can only use the stuff we've learned in week one, right? So the scope of these projects we're not going to be solving the world's problems in week one with this mini project. But the idea is that we're looking at all of this theory and we're applying them to a program that does something, that achieves a task. And that is really important because the theory by itself doesn't help you write programs. So we're going to be writing lots of programs. And the way the projects will work is we'll split them into tasks and we say, okay, the task for today is the following. You have a go at that. You try to write the code. You go on the forum and we have discussions there. You post your code, you look at code other people wrote, and then I will have a video at the end of the day showing you my version. We'll discuss them in Q&As and live sessions, and then we move on. The following day, we'll have something else to add on the project. You try it out first. And that's the idea. The idea is that you try working on the projects. If you succeed, great. If you don't succeed, it's fine as well, because we're all as a group working together. So someone asked me earlier, what's the difference between self-learning? And that's the difference, that I'm there every step of the way, steering you in the right direction, guiding you. If you've taken a wrong step, I'll explain why we don't want to do that and move to the different direction. So that's my role throughout the 8 weeks. Good. I can see a few more questions coming in. I'll come to them in a bit. Let me go quicker through weeks 2 to 8. So we then move on to iteration is an important aspect of programming. This is when we repeat something. For example, in programming, often you have something you want to do, an action you want to perform on lots of things. So you want your computer program to repeat the same task, the same action on lots of things. That's what iteration more or less does. And we'll see that there are loops that help in this, so for loops. But also, we'll start looking at lists it's a data structure. What does this mean? Computer programs need to store data, information. And then they do something with those data, with that information. But storing the information in your program isn't as easy as it sounds. Why? Because if you think of storing data as putting something in a box, then the analogy here is that you have different types of boxes for different content. You wouldn't put your leftover food in the same box you would put in your attic if you're storing books, for example. Does that work? Anyway, you get the idea. We need different types of storage containers in our program. And lists is one of the most important ones, so we'll start talking about it. But we'll talk about others. For example, here in week 2, there's another strangely named data structure. So we'll start talking about the different ways, the different containers you can use to store data in. This is such an important part of programming. Another mini project. Week 3, we move to what I think is the superpower of programming. In modern programming, I think functions, I'll tell you what they are in a bit, they're that thing that make programming very powerful and very flexible. So a function is a self-contained mini program, which normally doesn't have too much code, but it does one thing. It does it well, but it does one thing. And therefore, this bubble, this self-contained mini program within your larger program, whenever you want to perform that action, you can simply reuse that function. Now, functions are everywhere in Python, but you can also write your own. So you can if you think of Python as a language, you can invent your own words and give them a meaning. And then you can use those words whenever you want. And that is such an important tool in programming. It makes programs, you can extend them much easily once you can take one small task, package it into a function, and then keep using it over and over again when you need it with different inputs. So we'll talk about defining functions all throughout week 3, another mini project there. Week 4, we move on to more data structures. I've talked about these boxes we need, the different types of boxes to store different types of information. So you store your data in all sorts of different containers in programming, depending on what the data is and what you want to do with it. So on week 4, we're going to explore this further. We're going to look at some other data structures and some of the concepts on how do you choose, if I have all these different types of boxes, how do I know which one to choose? We'll talk about it, and we'll talk about how we make those decisions. We then move on to week 5. And week 5, we're going to talk about a topic called object-oriented programming. Again, if you're a beginner, these words don't mean anything, right? But object-oriented programming is often considered more of an intermediate level topic. So why did you put it in the beginner's course? I can hear you shout at me. Well, I'll tell you why. So we're going to have a gentle introduction to this topic, but there are 2 reasons I want to introduce it in a beginner's course. The first one is because it's such an important aspect of modern programming. It's everywhere in modern programming that you really ought to have at least a gentle introduction, an understanding of this. It's often called a paradigm, fancy words. It's a style of coding. It's good to have an idea of the style of programming early on because you'll just see it everywhere in Python. You will go on to maybe use it directly or maybe use code that uses it. So having an understanding of this important style of coding is important early on. That's reason 1. Reason 2 is that Python, the language itself, is inherently an object-oriented programming language. What do I mean by this? That as soon as you start digging underneath the surface, you'll see that the wiring that connects everything together in Python is based on these principles. So understanding the basics of this, we call it OOP for short, understanding the basics of OOP helps us understand the Python language a lot better. In fact, as we go through these concepts in week 5, and then I'll show you in week 6, we'll be looking back at what we've done in weeks 1 and 4. And some of those things will be like, now I understand it. Everything starts to make more sense because we're understanding the style of coding that's used to build the Python language itself. So that's why OOP, which is normally a sort of more intermediate topic, we're introducing it gently in a beginner's course. And more mini projects there, of course. And then we move on to week 6. There's more object-oriented programming. So we've finished talking about some of these concepts. And then we talk about, I love the word debugging. So programming is one of those professions where we're honest about mistakes. We don't hide them under the carpet. There aren't many professions like that, right? But programming is one of them. Every programmer will tell you, I make mistakes. I write programs and there are bugs in those programs. A bug is when the code either gives you an error or, even worse sometimes, it gives you an output. It gives you a result, but that result is wrong. So that's when we have a bug in our code. We've done something wrong. We're humans after all. And because we're honest about it in programming, we have a whole section of programming called debugging, which means we need to first figure out that there's a bug in our code. Sometimes it's obvious. Sometimes, these are the dangerous ones, it's not obvious that we have a bug in our code. So we need to be on the lookout to look for them. Once we know that there's a bug, we need to know where it is in our code. It's not always straightforward. What's causing it and how to fix it. So debugging is a bit of a mixture between art and science. So we'll start looking at some of these debugging techniques, which you can then explore further as you learn more Python. That's weeks 1 to 6. And this is where the core content lies, because week 7 and 8, we're going to work exclusively on a project. So we had lots of mini projects in weeks 1 to 6. But now, the last 2 weeks, week 7, and you'll see week 8 is the part 2 of the project, we're just going to be working on a project for 2 weeks. So 10 days, 5 days on week 7, 5 days on week 8. And as you can imagine, this is going to be a larger project than the one we've covered before. And we're going to be covering pretty much all the topics we've covered in weeks 1 to 6. And here we're going to see them all working together because this is now a larger project. So we have all the parts we learned about. We need to fit them together and make sure they work as a well-oiled machine in a larger project. So that's week 7 and 8, which brings us to the 5th of December when you're ready to go and start using your knowledge to learn further, but also hopefully start using it in whatever you want to use Python for. Good. I'm talking a lot today. As I said, in the courses, it won't be like this, right? We'll all be having a conversation as if we're sitting around a coffee table in a quiet coffee shop. But here, it's me giving you information. I've got a few questions there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to glance to my left to look at questions, keep them coming in, and then I'll sort of recap everything. So I've more or less finished what I wanted to say. So now it's up to you to steer me in whatever direction you want me to talk about. Last question I had answered was Maureen's on Zoom. Miguel, is it possible to be one day on group 1 and 2 other days on group 2? Yes, we are flexible. Ideally, we'd like to have sort of 2 separate groups and we know who's there. But if you have reasons and you need to shift groups, talk to us, yes, it is. The answer is yes, it is possible. Ideally, we don't want people just to be moving around groups, but if you have a reason why on one day you can do one, on another day you can do the others, that's perfectly fine. Likewise, if you're on one of the groups and on a certain Wednesday you have a boring work meeting you can't avoid, or so not boring, yeah, of course they're useful work meetings, I'm sure. And you're like, oh, I can't avoid that meeting, and you want to come to the other group, that's also fine, right? So we're nice and friendly here, so we're flexible. So hopefully that answered your question in terms of yes is the answer. Ideally, you stick to a group, but there is flexibility. Matt says, I did a Python course in another school. We had assignments, but I got stuck. We were supposed to make a... my teacher just said we had to Google the solution or use AI. Well, AI actually is something I can talk about, right? So I can tell you I won't be sending you to Google. No, so the way I see this is I'm there the next 8 weeks. All I'm doing is working on these 2 cohorts. So that's my only task for the next 8 weeks. So I'll be there guiding you, discussing. I will not run out of time. I'm on the forum from the moment I wake up. Well, I mean, throughout my whole, well, I'm going to say throughout my whole working day. I'll be there a bit later as well in the weekend as well. So all I can tell you is that I'll be there throughout the whole 8 weeks guiding you. We'll have lots of live sessions to talk about things. Another thing I should say is that on the forum and in the live sessions, it will always be me. No TAs, no sort of other people who don't really know what's happening. It will be me talking to you. So I've designed the course, I'm running it, and I'll be the one communicating with you in the forum, in the live sessions, all throughout. So if you don't like my voice, that's the reason not to come on this course, because you'll hear a lot of it, unfortunately for you, over the next 8 weeks. Hopefully that answers your question, Matt, to some extent. So my job is to make sure you don't get stuck. I will say something about AI if people want, so I'll leave it till the end, but AI is obviously something that's there nowadays. I'll share my view on what's the role of AI in learning how to code and in coding. They're not the same thing. So I'll answer some more questions, and then if there's interest in AI, which maybe there is, I'll say a bit more. Can you give us some insights as to what the capstone project is? And Jeff's question is similar. Is the capstone just a single project we all do, or are there options for choosing your finished product? So we will do one project. All of us will work on the same project. I have a few options, so I can't tell you which one it will be because I have a few options, and then I'll choose one closer to the time. But typically, it's going to be a sort of project like writing an application that's a bit useful, like a personal planner type of project. But we want to also make it a bit rich. So we won't go down the simplest route. We'll add features to it because we want to be using all the topics we've been learning together and bring them all together. So we want the project to be, I don't want to say complex because complex is not necessarily always a good thing, but rich in features with lots of different things and lots of different moving parts fitting together. The reason why we will all do the same project is because then we can have a discussion. We're all working on the same ideas. You're all working on your own project. So we won't all have, let me explain this. We're all working on the same project, but you all have your own versions. So we don't all have to exactly write the same project, the same version. It will, your version might be slightly different to someone else's version, but by working on the same tasks, we can actually have discussions as a group. We can discuss the topics of the day, and that's where we learn more. If we're all working in isolation, then there is no we lose the benefit of being in a group where we can discuss things. So everyone will work on the same project, but you will all have different flavors. You will all add different flavors to your project, and some will maybe steer in one direction a bit, and others will steer in a different direction, and that is also great. Let me post again in the two chats, realpython.com/live for, this is the page I'm looking at there. So if you want to look at dates, how to enroll, cost, when the course starts, when it ends. Also, I've mentioned this already. I'll come back and have a look at questions in a bit. The times are there. One thing I should point out, daylight saving, we all love it, right? Unfortunately, daylight saving will shift in many countries while we're having this course. And as you may be aware, different parts of the world shift away from daylight saving at different times. So if you're in North America, you don't need to worry about this because you will have the same time. But if you, like me, are in Europe or other places, keep an eye on week 3, which is when North America has shifted from daylight saving, but the rest of Europe or Europe hasn't. And if you don't fall in North America and Europe, you probably know whether you follow one timetable or the other. So, for example, in my case here, you can see that my sessions are at in my time 11 in the morning and 9 in the evening every week except week 3, because this is the week when the United States have shifted, or and Canada, but us in Europe haven't shifted yet. So if timing is important and you're not based in North America, keep an eye on week 3 to make sure it works for you. And if you're somewhere which doesn't have daylight saving, then this will affect from week 3 onwards. So anyway, just mentioning it there in case the exact timing of the session is really important for you. Good. I've got a few more. Oh, hi, Andres. Sorry, I've just seen Andres there. I'm not sure whether you're still there. A colleague of mine who's just popped in on X. I've been using VS to create my scripts. Can I run them at my own website or just run on yours? No, you'd be able to keep using VS, absolutely. So you can use whatever tools you want. I mentioned this earlier, but I'll mention it again. In terms of what editor you want to use, what you're going to choose to write your Python code on, you'll be doing it on your computer. If you have never done Python before, we will guide you on what you need to install. You need to install Python. You need that. And then there are options on the editor you want to use. So we'll guide you. If you've never done any Python coding before, don't worry. We will tell you what software you need. If, however, you already have something you're comfortable with coding in Python, VS Code, PyCharm, idle, whatever it might be, pen and paper. Well, no, pen and paper, maybe not. Stick with that. Yeah, we're not going to force you to use any tools. Yeah, I'm very open in terms of use whatever tools are comfortable for you. But if you need guidance, we'll guide you. Someone said simple is better than complex. Complex is better than complicated. This is one of the mantras in the Zen of Python. So anyway, if that doesn't make sense to you, we'll mention it throughout the course. I think it's because I mentioned complex earlier. Yeah, what I should have said is the code is not complicated. It might be complex, but not complicated. Anyway, I'm off at a tangent there. Is it mainly based on string changes, or are you also looking at numerical use? Patrick's question. I'm trying to understand the question. Uh, I'm not sure I understand fully the question now. If your question is there a lot of, are there a lot of examples that use numerical data? I'm trying to think. In our projects as such, not too much, no. I think they're more generic. And the reason is that the sort of application you may have in mind, Patrick, let me know if that's not the case, is possibly things related to more data science or science applications where you have lots of numerical aspects. So in this course, we're not going to focus on any specific application of programming. We want to look at the fundamentals generally. So we're not going to steer into more data science or more scientific work. So yeah, I think it's going to be a bit more general without going specifically into any field. I'm not sure whether I've read between the lines of your question, Patrick, whether you're looking at more things like data science, science dealing with sort of numerical data. We're not going to necessarily go into too much onto the sort of data science and the more advanced material. So a lot of the examples will be more generic, I think. Have I missed any questions? If I have and I haven't answered them, let me know. You can pose them again or shout at me, hey, my question, you've forgotten about it. I think I've seen all of them and somehow answered all of them. What I'll do is I'll come and have a look. Um, Bob, I think oh yeah, Bob has answered the question again. So maybe I hadn't answered it correctly, Bob. Apologies. Can I run my scripts on my own website? If you have something to write, if you have something where you can run Python on, that's perfectly fine. So yeah, if you already run Python somewhere, you can write Python code, do something, and the code executes. That's perfectly fine. Will there be any content related to JSON and serializing? No. This is more of the basics and the fundamentals, so we won't be talking about JSON and serializing. Will Python 14 be covered? I assume you mean 3.14. From a beginner's point of view, it doesn't matter. Yeah, you could be using Python 3.14, 3.13, 3.12, 3.11. The changes between 3.13 and 3.14 are not relevant to beginners. So I will be using 3.14 because it just came out 2 days ago, but it doesn't really matter. As long as we're beyond, let's say, 3.10, that's when there are changes that really matter from a beginner's point of view. 3.13, 3.14, 3.12. From a beginner's point of view, it doesn't matter. So you can use whatever. If you, for those who have never installed Python, I'm going to send you to install Python this weekend, and the Python available now is 3.14. So you will have 3.14. I actually just installed my 3.14 this morning because it came out yesterday, I think, right? But for everything that you will need, you won't notice any difference between 3.14 and 3.13 in practice. What software are you using to draw the diagrams? I get this question often. This one on a Mac is MindNode. There are many other softwares like this, right? It's a mind mapping software. So I think it's Mac only. But anyway, MindNode is the answer. After this course, will I be able to build my own project? I had a hard time doing that after my other project. So depends on what I mean. Here's my honest answer. Will you be able to write your own project after this course? It depends what sort of project you have in mind. If you have a really complex project, then the answer is going to be not yet. Why? Because programming is a very technical subject. And unfortunately, there's no shortcut. If you're a beginner, and this is where I'm going to talk about AI, by the way, because AI has a role to play in my train of thought. But if you're a beginner and you want to write complex, complicated, whatever one wants, code that does lots of things, then there's a big gap between being a beginner and being able to achieve lofty targets. And you can work hard and shorten the time it takes from beginner to being able to write those complex projects. But at the end of the day, you have to learn the fundamentals and learn them well. Then move on to learn some more intermediate topics and get experience. That's the thing where you need the experience to write lots of projects. What you'll be able to do at the end of this code is write ambitious projects which aren't trying to, however, solve all the world's problems. So there are simple projects, medium projects, and very advanced projects. This is a beginner's course. You will be able to write projects, but if you have something quite complex in mind, then you probably would need to gain a bit more experience and a bit more knowledge in other intermediate topics. That is the honest answer. I know some people would like to hear, I'd like to be able to go from zero to writing complex code in 6 weeks. That doesn't happen, unfortunately. Like with any other profession, right? What profession do you know where you can go from nothing to expert in 6 weeks? So programming is the same. Let me have a look. So that's Matt's question. Again, Matt, if you have something in mind, by the way, I should mention here, I did promise I'll talk about AI, so I will in a second. If any of you have specific questions that you want to speak to me directly, for example, if you're thinking, I'm not quite a beginner, but I'm not sure whether this course is the right one for me, send me an email. If you're one of the Zoom people, you have my email address already. Anyone else, you'll find me on social media or just go to Real Python, send an email to Real Python, mention my name, say, I was talking to Steven the other day, and the Real Python admin team will send it to me immediately. So if you want to talk to me to find out where this course is for you, do get in touch. I have another question, and then I'll say a few words about AI. I have a non-tech background. Will this help me break the barrier into tech jobs? Well, yes, because tech jobs, now not all tech jobs are the same, right? But a lot of tech jobs will somehow, the route leading to them is through programming. And what we're learning here is the fundamentals of programming. Yes, we're learning Python. We are real Python after all. But a lot of the basics that you learn about programming are common for other languages as well. So it is the first step into the tech world. And this is a course that doesn't require any prior knowledge. So if you're not from a tech background, you never heard of programming before, we will start from the basics. We will start from the very, very beginning. AI. What's the role of AI in learning and in coding? Now, everything to do with AI is very new. It's changing from day to day. So what I tell you now might have changed by tomorrow morning, the rate AI is going. But the consensus amongst people who use programming and AI for real world scenarios is that AI is brilliant for experienced programmers. The more experienced you are, the more you can leverage AI to speed up your work and to be able to work at a level just above your current level. So it helps you upskill and it helps you do things quicker and more efficiently. When it comes to people who don't know programming, you hear a lot about vibe coding, right, etc. So, and it's getting better, but at the end of the day, no professional code, no one will have professional code that's going to be doing real world damage without experienced programmers being involved in the process. Sure, AI can help. So one day in the future, I think in the distant future, we might be at a point where AI will just do it all for us. At that stage, I think it will do many other jobs, not just programming. But the current AI is very much a tool that's making proficient programmers a lot more proficient and a lot more efficient. There you go. Now, does it mean that as a beginner you can't use it? No. In learning, I think it has a real useful role, as long as it's used correctly, like with everything. So throughout this course, I will actually talk a bit about AI, on how we can use it to learn. For example, a great way of using AI from a learning point of view is you've written code. Of course, throughout these 8 weeks, I am there. You can send your code to me, but in the general, beyond the course, that's where AI comes in useful, because you can give your code that you've written to AI and say, look, I'm a beginner-ish. This is what I know. So don't give me complex stuff. Can you look at my code? Can you suggest where I could improve it, where I could make it more Pythonic? Great word we'll talk about. What is the next thing maybe I should learn? This is what I know. And you can use AI to help you stretch your knowledge. What AI will not do is just solve your problem for you and write the code. It's getting better, but you still need to know, you still need a programmer there who can guide the AI into the right direction, check what the AI is giving you. So AI is great. It's a great tool. What it has done is that it has shortened the gap between not knowing any programming to being able to do something useful with programming. 5 years ago, you'd have to learn the basics and then you'd have to learn a bit more, and then you can start working on projects. AI has squashed that timeline a bit because now, once you know the fundamentals, you're in a position to have a sensible conversation with AI because you know what you're talking about. You can assess what the AI is telling you. So I think what AI has done is it's shortening the time it takes to be able to write efficient code. But the basics, the fundamentals, and the knowledge still needs to be there, I think. Good. On the hour, I'm happy to stay longer if you have questions, but I also don't want to keep you too long. So I'll give you a bit of time to think of your last questions and pose them. Let me go back to, in fact, this page, there you go. Let me go through a 30-second summary of all that matters. So beginners, this is a course for beginners, absolute beginners, or those who have done some of the basics but still consider themselves beginners. It's going to be 8 weeks. You're going to see a lot of me. You're going to hear a lot of my voice. So hopefully you like it. Uh, every day is going to be roughly 1 or 2 hours of commitment every day. A lot of this is you have the flexibility of doing it whenever you want in your day. But we do meet live as well. This is important because we can have conversations, discussions. You can ask questions. We can explore topics. Every cohort is 10 students, so we can have those conversations. We will have 2 cohorts, so there are 2 times you can choose from. And the glue that binds everything together is the forum, the ongoing discussion. Ask questions anytime. I'll be posting daily on the forum, my perspective on the topic of the day, sometimes some extra exercises. So things will keep going 24/7 on the forum throughout those 8 weeks. I do have one more question from Anastasios. What would be a success for a participant of those 8 weeks? It's 8 weeks, by the way. Um, if I understand your question correctly, okay, let me answer the question I think it is, and then let me know if I've answered the wrong question. By the end of, in fact, let me finish, let me go back. No, too much scrolling here to show you everything. So by the end of these 8 weeks, you will have covered the fundamentals of programming in Python that are needed for any application of programming you need. I often give this analogy in terms of using programming for real world tasks. Imagine you're out in a park on a sunny day and there's one of these large trees, right? You have the tree trunk, and then after a certain height, you have the branches that start branching out. And each branch, in my analogy, is an application of programming, data science, game development, web development, whatever it might be. Every branch goes off in a different direction. The only way you can get to those branches is by climbing the tree trunk first. And those are the fundamentals. And that's what we'll be covering in this course. Those fundamentals that whatever you want to do with Python, doesn't really matter. You need those fundamentals because you can't get to those branches without climbing the tree trunk. So what you'll achieve at the end of this course is you'll get all of those fundamentals, the bread and butter, the building blocks of any Python programming, and you'll have a not just you won't just know them, you'll have a good understanding of them. We'll have worked on lots of projects, mini projects and a large project. So you've learned the theory, we've discussed it, so you got that, yes, I got it. And then we've put it all together in projects. And that will will set you up for whatever you want to do. You might need to do more learning afterwards, right? So depending on what you want to achieve, the learning doesn't stop after 8 weeks. So you're not going to be the world's expert in Python after 8 weeks. Of course not. But you'll have the fundamentals really well understood. So that's what I think success at the end of the 8 weeks is. Hopefully that was the question you were asking me, Anastasios. Good. I'll pause a bit. I'll keep an eye on the chat in case more questions come in. Let me finish off with there. Just to give you that site again. I'll post it in the chats as well. Just so you have it again. realpython.com/live. The course, this beginner's course starts this Monday. At the moment, I'm the one running these courses, so we're not running these courses that frequently. So after this one, the next beginner's course is not scheduled yet, but it's likely to be middle of next year or later. So, so that's just to give you an idea of the frequency. We have two cohorts running now. The next beginner's course is likely to be middle of next year or thereabouts. Course starts on Monday. It's 8 weeks. All the information you need is realpython.com/live. If you have more questions, please do contact me if you want to find out whether your specific situation, this is the course for you or not. I'll give you an honest answer. Just before joining the session, I was answering someone who came to an earlier live session, and she was telling me, look, this is what I need. Is this the course for me? My answer was no, it's not. And that's it, right? Because we'd rather, we want to have people for whom this course will actually work. So I'll give you my honest view if you want to get in touch. Good. If there are no more questions for now, I will let you carry on with your day, whether it's morning, afternoon, evening. Hopefully, I'll see some of you on Monday for the course. And if not, maybe I'll see you at some point in the future around the Python world. You'll see me on wherever social media, at Real Python, of course. Articles, you might find my name on an article you're reading or a video course you're watching. Enjoy the rest of your day. If you have questions, let me know. And hopefully I'll see some of you on the Python for Beginners course starting on Monday. So I've got, anyway, I've said my byes there. Someone said, can I message you privately? Yes, send me an email, Jeff. You have my email because you're on Zoom, so just email me. Sergio, how much time does a course last for? So this is an 8-week course, if that's your question. So this course is 8 weeks long. Good. What I'll do is I'll stay in the background a bit and I'll keep an eye on any questions and answer them, but I'll let you carry on with your day. Thank you all for joining.